Welcome back. All right, so some news of the day for all you fine people on the internet. Again, it is Super Bowl Sunday, so don't expect any big trades or anything. So all the GMs are going to be watching football. So during last night's 32 Thoughts on Hockey Night in Canada, Jeff Merrick was talking about the Canucks and who they might be interested in. Now, this is just an example. So Jim Rutherford knows that the Canucks need to change. And what they seem to be looking for is young players who can play now and speed. Speed being important. One player they're looking at apparently is Pavel Zacha. And that's as far as that goes, is that there's interest. That's the type of player he's looking at. I don't know how many trade speculation videos there are going to be on the internet, how many articles there will be all over the internet on what the Canucks could give up for Zacha and what else they could get from New Jersey. I'm kind of on the fence with it. I do think there are players in New Jersey who could use a change of scenery. If I was going to target a player in New Jersey that I thought maybe, and I don't think they're available, it'd be Sharangovich. I would target Sharangovich if I was, looking to acquire a player from New Jersey. But that's me. Now, the interesting part with Zacha is he may end up moving. It may not end up being Vancouver, but he's a restricted free agent this year. And again, as Jeff Merrick's reporting, he's an unrestricted free agent next summer. So he could take a qualifying offer and walk himself to free agency next summer. It's a relatively young free agent too. So my guess is they'll get him moved before that becomes an issue. The one thing with Zacha is he's playing well. His numbers this year haven't been bad. And so I don't think New Jersey should give up on the idea of signing him to an extension. But if they can't, then yeah, a deal probably happens. But there's been a lot of discussion about how Jim Rutherford wants to make some moves and that the trades might pick up via Jim Rutherford deciding to make some deals. Maybe part of what holds it back is that the Canucks are still close enough to a playoff spot that maybe you don't completely sell. And so Rutherford and Alvin are going to have to sit down, discuss it. Maybe newly hired Cami Granato has, fresh eyes on the situation and she can have some say in all this as well. With the new brain trust in Vancouver, it will be interesting to see what direction they go in. Bruce Boudreau also, he stated that Pullman he feels is a week to 10 days away, and Brandon Sutter is unlikely to play this year. He hasn't played at all since his bout with COVID. He's had the long-term symptoms, and he hasn't been able to get out of it, which I'm guessing a big part of that is the fatigue. That's the one that I hear the most, is that the fatigue, you don't get your wind back, you don't have your stamina, and so as a hockey player, you wouldn't be able to play. So for Sutter, we'll see what that means for him this summer and whether or not he's able to return next season, right? Interesting news too, and again, this was out of last night's 32 Thoughts, that the Toronto Maple Leafs are working on a deal with Nick Ritchie. Now, he has passed through waivers. That makes him more attractive as a trade option. And Nick Ritchie, it's been just a nightmare season for him in Toronto. I'd be interested to see if the Bruins might look to make a move for him, only because I think Ritchie was decent for them as a depth forward last year. That being said, maybe Toronto wouldn't be wanting to move him to a division rival, but I mean, he's sitting in the AHL at this point, so we'll see. I wouldn't mind seeing him get moved to a team that I might root for. I do like Nick Ritchie in the right circumstance, right? In the right circumstance, he can be an effective player. I understand the frustrations Anaheim had with Nick Ritchie over time, and I had some frustrations with him in Boston at certain points in time as well, but he can be effective when he's used right. So we'll see what ends up happening. Of course, Austin Watson didn't play the game for Ottawa today because this was the first of a 2-game suspension for him. He was suspended for the hit on Ashawn. What's interesting to me is when I saw that hit yesterday, I didn't even report on it in the review of the game because I felt like the Watson-Ashawn hit was basically a result of Ashawn being a shorter player. And when you're a shorter player, you've got to keep your head up. You've got to be aware. And so, the suspension kind of threw me. I was kind of surprised to see that there was a hearing and then the suspension already because the games were early today. So he misses the first game. Ottawa won the game, though. Ottawa's not really in the running for a playoff. So, again, I was kind of surprised more than anything that ends up being a 2-gamer. But, again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you feel like it's a worthy suspension, let me know why. And that kind of thing. Because, again, it does sometimes feel like with the NHL there's some randomness to how this works. Nazem Kadri having a fantastic year. How fantastic is it? It took him half a season to pass his all-time high in points for a season. So in 2016-2017 with the Leafs, plays 80 games, 32 goals, 29 assists, 61 points. Great year for Kadri that year. And this year, mildly better than that. In only 43 games played now, he has 20 goals, 42 assists for 62 points. So one more point than his career high, and 37 less games to do it. So Kadri's had a fantastic year. He's a UFA this summer. Every time that he gets these points and these markers and he keeps it up, you know, for Joe Sakic, he's got to be considering what the options are. And hopefully they figure something out with Kadri, and Kadri realizes if he was playing for, say, the Islanders, he likely would not have 62 points in 43 games. So realizing that his points totals are going to be higher in Colorado, it's probably beneficial to him to stay in Colorado and maybe take a little bit less money than he'd get on the open market. But easier said than done, right? And for the Avs right now, they're having this remarkable run. They're now leading the Central Division by 11 points. Absolutely insane how much padding they have atop the division. So if we see some kind of a rut over the next 5 or 6 games, if they go kind of that can happen, where a team is so far ahead that maybe they get a little bit complacent. Maybe they don't see every game as a must-win, right? So we'll see what happens with Colorado. But right now, for them, everything's coming up Millhouse. Okay, so Boston. News with Boston. Bergeron could return this week. Bruce Cassidy stating this. And hopefully he does return this week. Again, for Marchand, his suspension will continue. It is being appealed. I would be kind of surprised if it gets lowered from the 6 games, maybe to 5. But I don't see it being lowered by very much. And so for Boston, they just got to fight their way through. They get the victory yesterday over Ottawa, but we'll see how the rest of this goes for them. Last night's Olympic hockey. I watched the part of the first period between Sweden and Finland. I did know who I was watching, Sweden and Finland, and of course, that's always a fun matchup. And seeing some guys that I haven't seen in a while, I was like, Lucas Wallmark, there's a blast from the past. So yeah, it was kind of fun watching some of that, but again, I have to sleep. So I didn't watch the whole thing, but Finland was down 3-0 against Sweden and come back and win that one in overtime 4-3. So as we get ready for the men's tournament to do the qualifying round and then the quarterfinals, semifinals, and all that, nice to see Finland come back from that and get that victory for Sweden. And for Sweden, that's points they lose there. So yeah, we'll see how the medal round goes. I know that the women's, they're into the semifinals. I watched part of the game against Russia, and I watched part of the game between Canada and the U.S. Again, these Olympics are just on in the middle of the night. I am very fortunate, just with what I do here, that they didn't send the NHLers over to the Olympics, because I don't know when I would have got sleep. Sleep would have been elusive for me, because these games are on in the middle of the night. And I worked graveyards at one point in my life. I did that for about 6 months. My body hated it. Absolutely hated graveyards. It was like, no, we are not going to work now. So I would walk into work, and as I would start my shift, I'd feel my body saying, oh, I need to go to sleep now. It's like, come on, we just started. So yeah, the Olympics, there's been some fun stuff. I know Canada has a bunch of medals. Only the 1 gold so far, but fingers crossed that there's more gold coming Canada's way. Interesting looking at the standings right now in the East. So for Washington, they lose their 5th in a row at home. And they're putting themselves in a precarious position. So they have 61 points in 50 games. They're still 11 games above NHL 500. There is no immediate danger of Washington falling out of the playoffs, or Boston, who have 57 points in 46 games. But what's interesting is Boston's now played 4 less games than Washington, and they have 4 less points. So it is quite possible Boston ends up going ahead of Washington, especially with the way things have been going for Washington lately. Not that Boston's been setting the world on fire in the last month either. You have Detroit, 49 games played, 50 points. So they have played 3 more games than Boston. They're 7 points back. And then you have Columbus. They've played the same number of games as Boston. So they have 4 games in hand on Washington. And they're 14 points behind Washington. Detroit's 11 points behind Washington. There may be something to watch here if over the next couple of weeks Washington and or Boston stay, kind of mired in this one up, one down, or two down and one up kind of situation. But yeah, while the East looks pretty settled, we could see those races maybe tighten up at least a little bit, just a bit, right? It would be great if with a month to go we're talking about how the East isn't as settled as we thought. Well, that would be about a month and a half from now, so we'll see. So this coming week, the NHL and the NHLPA will have a meeting to discuss the 2024 World Cup. And it really feels like this is an olive branch from the league to the NHLPA in order to try to make up for the Olympics. The plan is to go to the 2026 Olympics as well. And honestly, it generates a lot of money for the NHL. What I'll be interested to see is whether or not they do the same format they did with the last World Cup, which I was not a huge fan of. The 23 and under team and the Team Europe, and what bothered me with the 23 and under team was it meant that you didn't have Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby on the same team. I feel like having all of the Canadians on the same team, all the Americans on the same team, if you have to do... I mean, and then it gets dodgy, right? Like if you did 2 Team Canadas and 2 Team US and put each of them in a separate grouping. But again, because then you could have Canada versus Canada, or US versus US for the gold medal. But they have to find some kind of a balance and include countries that probably aren't going to do very well, but it might increase the the standing of the tournament. At least make it look like there's other countries in there other than just the big 4 or 5. And yeah, so we'll see how they do it. We'll see what kind of format they come up with and the timing, because if it's in February 2024, if they're going to shut down the regular season for this, how long is the tournament going to take? And yeah, that could be an interesting one too, shutting down the season. So you'd have another really tough season for players where there's going to be a lot of games in a short period of time. And I wonder at what point the NHLPA says, we're exhausted. We keep playing these contracted seasons and all these games being played over a short period. Can we not? But we'll see, right? We'll see what happens with the World Cup and what the plan is and how the NHL deals with it. Because we know the Global Series is coming back next season as well. I'm going to be interested to see how that turns out. And yeah, I'll be here to report on it when it does. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.